I started, it was 1994, and one of my best friends came to me and he said, hey, you got to see this event on TV. It's a cage fight. It's on pay-per-view, and it's no rules, no gloves. The only rule is you can't gouge someone's eye out or you can't bite them. So I was like, man, I want to see this. So, we watched this event, and a little skinny guy named Hoist Gracie just goes through the whole event and just kills everybody. And there was huge bodybuilders, there was a sumo wrestler, the bar brawlers, boxers, karate experts, everybody was in this event. And this little skinny guy just choked everybody out. It was arm locking people, and I was like, wow, I gotta find this. I gotta see what this is all about. At the time, it was only in Brazil, in one single gym in California. So there was absolutely no resources at all in this whole country, basically, except for one little spot. So what I ended up doing was I would gather information from videotapes, from fights that I was watching in the UFC, and for about 2 years, I would just only study the videotapes. And I also was able to get my hands on an article, a magazine, where Rickson Gracie wrote an article every month in. It was Black Belt Magazine. And so I would get this magazine every month and just basically but learn the stuff that he was showing in the articles, trying that out and just going from there. It was around 1996 when I saw that in that same magazine that there was an article for a gym opening in New York City where one of the Gracies was teaching, Renzo Gracie. He was moving from Brazil and opening this gym in Manhattan. And I was just immediately, I just knew that I just had to be there, So after work, I would just get on the train and just start traveling there directly after work every single day, And I did that for, 12, almost 13 years, training directly with Renzo. But yeah, so I jumped on the train that first day. I told my parents that's what I wanted for my birthday. It was a 1 month training at the gym, and the rest is history. My biggest influence is coming up in jiu-jitsu. Again, I was very fortunate to grow up around the guys that I grew up with. I was lucky to be in this room surrounded by these men. Obviously, Renzo Gracie was the biggest influence in my jiu-jitsu. Outside of that, Ryan Gracie was just a huge, huge influence. This is somebody that I became very, very close with, and the things that I learned from him is just a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of technique, and also just stuff about philosophies on life and stuff. So I learned a lot from Ryan. Daniel Gracie was a huge influence on me. This guy is just, these guys have been around since before I even started training. These guys were already black belts, most of them. So the amount of influence and wealth of knowledge that they poured on me is tremendous. Rafael Gorginho was another huge influence on me. Holes Gracie, Igor Gracie, Gregor Gracie, Hodger Gracie was huge. These guys were guys that pretty much, helped shape what I am as far as jiu-jitsu. Guys like Matt Serra, Ricardo Almeida, Rodrigo Gracie, these are guys that I grew up with. These are like my older brothers coming up through the ranks. They were always the guys above me that kind of took me under their wing and taught me how to come up the right way. So again, I find myself very lucky to be able to be coming up with that type of background in the jiu-jitsu world. Again, this goes back to my influences. Growing up around that group of guys gave me just a solid foundation of what the art is, the art of just not only jiu-jitsu but also MMA. And based on that, and also having just so much knowledge and experience working with some of the best UFC fighters and coaches in the world, I've gained a very solid kind of just foundation in MMA, and I know what it takes to be a champion. I know what it takes to be a real fighter. So a lot of the guys, they come in here and, they're Facebook warriors, they're posting stuff on Facebook, and they think they want to be involved in MMA and they want to be a fighter, but in reality, to become a successful fighter, you need to just kind of, you need to live the most grueling lifestyle that you can ever imagine. Being an MMA fighter is the most grueling lifestyle that you can imagine. So when I give them, the blueprint to become a fighter, it's just, they cannot handle it. And a lot of guys will just, they'll break and they start not showing up for practices. And, I'm the kind of coach that will just hold you to it. I'm not going to let you get away with just not showing up. And I'm going to call you out on it, and I'm going to give me some excuse, some stupid excuse, and I'm just going to be like, hey man, it's just it's no excuse, there is no excuse. You either make it happen or you don't want to do it all the way. It's just, you give it 100% or it's just worthless. And that's not just in fighting, but in everything in general. You have to give it 100%. If you're not giving something 100%, you can't expect the same result back, okay? So it's kind of like, Einstein said it best, man, everything is at a certain frequency. Everything works at a certain frequency. If you want to win, you want to be a dominant MMA fighter, you have to train at that frequency that the other fighters in that level are training. And if you can't match that frequency, you just need to, you need to think about doing something else. So I have to be the one to call them on that, and not only that, but I have to sometimes tell guys, I don't think you're ready to fight, and a lot of people don't want to hear that. But again, me as a coach, I have to take their safety into consideration. You can go out there and be physically, brain damage can happen instantly. You can be maimed for the rest of your entire life within 30 seconds out there. And that's if you're fully prepared, right? That's if you're ready. You've been training 6 days a week. So to slack on any of the training, you increase that percentage of risk. And I don't feel comfortable putting those guys out there in that. So I have to be real with you. A lot of guys don't like that. They take it personal. They do the blame game, and it's a very common human response to blame other people when you are not capable of accomplishing something. So they look to blame me and they say that I'm a hard coach. In reality, the guys that put in the work and the guys that are here every day bleeding in the gym and the ones that are successful, they don't say I'm a hard coach at all. Because again, I don't have to be on them. They show up, they do the work, they listen to the directions, and they become good. But so that's really it in a nutshell. These guys a lot of people think that I'm a hard coach just because I'm a little hard on the requirements, and I don't bullshit, I don't sugarcoat things, so that's about it. To become a black belt, you have to be an exceptional person. You have to be an extremely exceptional person. You have to get used to failure and get used to losing, and not only get used to that, but learn how to grow from that. You look at a black belt, you look on the mat, and he's just tearing everybody up, he's choking everybody out, he's beating everybody, but you don't see that guy's journey, You only see the end result of him just killing everybody. In reality, at one point, he was a white belt getting choked out by everybody and beat up by everybody too. A black belt gets choked out and beat up and arm locked thousands and thousands of times over his career before receiving his black belt. So you have to be able to lose, be able to accept failure, and to grow each individual day, kind of in increments, in small increments. And it's really not easy. You need to master other things like, just dedication, empathy. You need all of these certain traits you need to master to become a black belt. It's really a hard road. It's a long road. And, at one time, everybody starts out as a white belt. So, you look at some of these black belts and you're like, man, this guy is just a monster. But you don't see his journey starting at white belt. He was just like you, getting choked, getting beat up. So you have to be able to accept failure and to build upon that failure every day, not getting emotional, and just remaining objective in your growth and just coming up the right way without kind of getting mad and just getting too emotional with it. My philosophy on life. It's very interesting. So many great minds have said it throughout history. From Socrates to Plato to, Leonardo da Vinci, Einstein, everyone. reason over emotion. You know, it has to be. It's my philosophy on life is a balance of a little bit higher reason over emotion. You know, and it has to be a fine balance. You know, most people walk around, they're just too emotional. So this affects your decision making. You're not able to make the right decisions because it's all based on emotion. You know, so it has to be reason over emotion. You know, and that's really what it is. Socrates actually was really big on studying like the way that people think, and you know, again, his philosophy was the same thing: reason over emotion. But then he went back and actually backtraced it and was like, okay, why did you do this? You know, you did this because of the way you felt. You know, why did you feel this way? You felt this way because of your influences and your thought process. You know, so you go back and you can see why that you make the decisions you make. And usually you'll find that if you stick with reason and if you practice reason every day, in certain situations, you're going to be able to have an easier time in life. You also won't have like the ups and downs, the emotional ups and downs of always like becoming upset or, you know, when things don't go your way. I forget who else said it best. There was another guy, I believe it was either Plato or Socrates, that said, you know, like, there is no right or wrong. Actually, it was Shakespeare. There is no right or wrong. It's only you making yourself believe that, you know? So, in other words, if you're using reason and you do something, right, and you fail, you're going to say to yourself, if you're using reason, you're like, okay, I failed. What did I do wrong? I did this wrong. I'm going to fix this. Next time, I'm not going to do that wrong. It's going to be perfect the next time. Next time is going to be better. If you're emotional, you're going to be like, oh man, what did I do wrong? I screwed up. I'm bad. I'm not that great. So you're already labeling yourself. Oh, the other guy's better. You're labeling it good or bad. So if you label things good or bad, you're already kind of creating an emotional kind of world for yourself to live in. And also you're attaching an emotion to it. So this way you're not able to think and reason because you're too emotional. So my philosophy is definitely reason over emotion. Now you don't want to be too much with reason, right? So you can't be just all reason, no emotion, because then there's no creativity, there's no subjectivity. And you know, then so you're like a robot, right? So there has to be a fine balance, but I believe that's the balance that I like anyways. Basically, it is, again, goes back to my philosophy on life. You have to think reasonably at all times and try to remain objective. And I've just remained objective the whole time, you know, just trying to create, you know, this gym and to preserve the room, preserve the emblem, preserve the team for future generations. So I've remained kind of just almost one-track minded about that. And I just kind of shut all outside influences out. You know, you're always going to have people against you and battling against you, doubting you. And you just have to learn how to shut all that off and to, you know, channel it all to something positive. You know, it goes back to giving it 100%. You have to give everything 100%. You know, if you don't give it 100%, you're not going to get the result that you're looking for. So with me, I found that I was able to just give everything 100% and just try as hard as I could without letting outside kind of stuff get in my way. Again, I remained objective and tried to keep my emotions down. Even when people are telling you it's not going to work, you just have to learn how to accept this criticism and move on just with your journey, your own journey yourself. It did blow up really fast. And again, this just kind of goes back to just me just grinding out and just shutting out all outside kind of things. But you know, interestingly enough, when you do something like this, you start to become one-track minded. And that's what kind of happened to me is I started becoming just so one-track minded where I would just focus on success, just focus on building it. And I start to get a little cloudy. I started to get a little cloudy with my thought process on what's really important. You know, and while it is really important, you know, there was a time recently where, you know, I was sitting in a room, and I'm sitting in a room with my mother in a hospital bed, and my brother's there, and my sister's there, and my father's there, and the doctor comes in and tells us that your mother has cancer, and so I'm looking at my brother's face, I'm looking at my father, looking at my mother, and I could see the panic in their face, like the pure panic, and there's nothing that I could do to help them, and they're looking at me and they could see the panic back, and it's just, there's nothing that I can do at that moment. And it's in a moment like that that it's just a tremendous amount of clarity that comes to you in a certain situation like that. In a moment like that, when you get this clarity, you realize just how much shit that we hold on to that's just so unnecessary, that it just doesn't even matter. And there's only a few things that truly matter in life, and that has helped me to really realize what's important and what's not. And you come to realize that most of the shit that you worry about every single day and all the other stuff and the distraction, it's all just shit. Again, it's just all self-imposed shit that really just does not matter at all. And that's when you realize, what is important. And although, my journey and my success is very important, what matters to me now is just the people around me that, that you really love and that really care for. And the gym goes along with that. So that kind of is now becoming my inspiration for going into the future. And that's now become my vision, not only for this company and this gym, but as far as myself. So I'm thinking more objectively now than ever, and I'm extremely focused on just the things that matter the most, and just kind of dispelling all the other just unnecessary shit that we worry about, that in the end just doesn't matter. And again, I hope that everybody is able to have this type of moment of clarity where you find out what really matters and just what doesn't. I don't wish anybody to have that same type of experience to find that moment of clarity, but I do wish that everybody is able to have that moment of clarity where you realize what matters and what doesn't. Yes, so we have Sam Watford fighting February 20th in Massachusetts. He is in the middle of a camp right now. We have about 3 weeks left of camp, so he's starting to peak now. He's in tremendous physical shape. Sam it's great to work with him. He's just, this is one of the guys that, again, I don't have to be on. He's in the gym every single day, he's training. If anything, I have to kind of yell at him to stay out of the gym and to take a break every once in a while, because he's here every second. Sometimes I'm here doing work late night at 2 in the morning, and all of a sudden I hear the door open. He pops in for a third workout of the day. So, with this type of talent that is just super dedicated, it's a great experience to be able to work with this type of fighter. So yeah, we have him coming up February 20th. I do have something in the works for April. Right now I can't talk about it until it's signed and sealed, but we are in negotiations with some guys here trying to lock down a date in April for a pretty big event. Outside of that, I do have some other big stuff in 2016 that's coming up that I also can't speak about. So I can tell you one thing, that 2016 is going to be a huge year for us, and a lot of big things. Most of them I can't talk about yet, but yeah, the one that I can say is just the February 20th, which is in 3 weeks in Massachusetts.